Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, thank you everybody for joining today and taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for our part 2 of 2 of the WPF Scheduled Job Screen webinar. I'm Kyle Sneerly. I'm the Director of Client Implementations here at Fleet Cost and Care. I'll be joined again by David Thornton, our Senior Product Manager, who's going to be leading the live demo today. And before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. You will be automatically muted, so don't worry about putting yourself on mute or accidentally coming off mute. That's not going to be an issue. During the presentation, at any time during the presentation, please feel free to submit any questions. There's a little Q&A icon on the Zoom menu bar that you can use to submit those questions. We'll try to get to most of them towards the end of the webinar today, but if we can't get to all of them, we'll send up follow-up emails and make sure all those questions are addressed. Also, there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. If you don't mind filling that out, we'd really appreciate it. It helps us with content and lets us know how we're doing. So just a quick overview of today's agenda. David's going to be going through some time logic changes within the new screen. And the majority of the webinar today is going to be focusing on the dispatching responsibilities around e-ticketing and e-ticket management, as well as copying the LEMs. So that's going to take up the majority of David's demo. And then we're going to wrap it up with a Q&A session at the end, save 10, 15 minutes for that. And like I said, please feel free to send those questions in at any point throughout the webinar, and we'll be tracking those throughout David's presentation. So with that said, David, I'll turn it over to you for the live demo.
Thank you, Kyle. All right. So what I have up here is the same job that we worked on during the last webinar. I thought it would be best to just continue working off of this one, or at least one of the jobs that I had worked on. And want to just highlight the time logic. So everyone should be familiar with the current time logic that you're working with in NextGen, as far as the relationship between the job date and time versus the unit date and time, the employee date and time, and how all that works. And over the years, we've gotten a lot of requests to refine that. So we took the opportunity to attempt to refine that, and hopefully everyone appreciates what they see today. And I think it would be even better if once you get your hands on it, to evaluate it and see what your thoughts are there. But before I get into the actual date and time, I want to cover the date flexible and time flexible. So in the past, users were able to mark the date flexible or time flexible and bypass the requirement for entering a date or a time in the job. The challenge with that was that you were able to add a job into the system that would never show up on a schedule. So to prevent that from happening, we have set it up to require that a date and a time is set. Obviously, you can change the date and time whenever, but you have to have something in there so that you're able to see it from a schedule. So even though we're not allowing you to bypass the date and time with the date flexible and time flexible, it's still going to show up on your schedule with the icon that we had before, showing you that that particular job is either date flexible or time flexible. Getting into the dates and times, in the last webinar, we covered just how versatile the date time control was in our new WPF screen. And now we'll get into what logic is there. So from the job date and time, there isn't a real change, short of going from 4 data entry fields to only 2. We took the date and time fields from legacy and put it into a single one, and hopefully that simplifies the data entry process. But other than that, there's no change at the job level for the date and time. It's still dependent on whatever you've defined in set system defaults. It's still going to look for the if you have a default start time or default end time, those will populate automatically. And then when you get into the resources tab and you add a unit, you can see that it pulls that time over just like it did in legacy if you had that feature enabled. I guess that's another thing to highlight is in the legacy screen, we had a set system default option that would enable or disable the mirroring of the date and time between the job date and the unit people tab. Well, we've done away with that for WPF. The flag still exists in set system defaults for now, just because we have to wait for everyone to migrate over. But that will go away. Instead, only the first record here is dependent on the job date and time. Every record that is entered thereafter is dependent on the previous record. So if I come in here and I set up a unit, and then I add, well, here, I'll make an adjustment here. So I'm going to say that this guy is until June 1st. So now if I add another unit, it picks up that June 1st date instead of picking up that June 25th date. So each successive record is going to look at the previous record in order to maintain relevance of that time frame. It may not be perfect, but instead of having to go back months and make changes, you're able to just keep it within the relevant time frame, at least hopefully. So I can add another unit here. Go with that guy. Now, when it comes to employees, this is using a similar logic. When I add a new record here, and I define that resource, you see that it pulled in from the unit, 4.6 to 6.1, 4.6 to 6.1. Now, the difference between how the employee works from the unit is that the employee timeframes work relative to the unit. So if I come in and I adjust this employee to say 6:30, and I add the Euler on there, now, hypothetically, Kyle has to come in 30 minutes early in order to do the pre-check or the pre-movement inspection. But Angie just has to show up, when they're supposed to roll out. So I've got this 30-minute offset. If I make a change to the start time of this unit by, customer asked that we're there an hour early. So I make that adjustment. You can see that both times moved relative to the unit time, factoring in the original plan to have a 30-minute offset between the two employees. And the same applies on the end time. So as you make adjustments to the start and end for the unit, it will apply in a relative fashion on each employee. Now, if you have an employee that is off on the dates, for example, I'll throw in a rigger, and I just so happen to only have Angie, so she's listed twice here. But if this is off, say Angie only needs to be there from the 9th through 15th, she will not be affected by the changes of the unit. So if I were to change this to the 7th and close, she stays 4/9 to 4/15, but these two employees, because they had already matched up with the unit, those dates changed. So that's just something to think about as far as the logic is concerned. And it's going to take some getting used to. Obviously, it is drastically different from what you experience today, but the intent is to reduce the number of times you have to change each individual record's date and time when you're adding all these resources in. So I'm sure that's going to spur a lot of questions, and hopefully we have enough time at the end in order to cover all of that. Additionally, on the specifications, we have a start and a start and an end date and time here. So I can set this for the, we'll say the 7th, and set this for the, hypothetically the 14th. So I can set in specific information for the job for that date range. And it's going to capture whatever you put into these additional fields here and replace the default values, for example, in the comments, description of work, or equipment required, it's going to replace that information just for this date range. Now, there are some nuances to this. These date ranges must be within the date range of the unit. It won't allow you to put anything outside of that date range. And you cannot have two records here with the same date range, because the system has to know what information to pass to the field employee, or to the Atom user. So it's critical that we have unique values identified in here. But you can add as many as you want, whether that's going day to day to day to day, or for the duration of the job, or you can omit it altogether. It's not required. But the time frame here, if you leave this at midnight, it's going to go across. So there's no requirement to set the time frame, but if you did, it would limit it to that specific time range when the e-ticket is sent. But don't feel obligated to put the time in there if the job is not, overly complicated. All right. Now that we've gotten through the time logic, we are going to go into the generating of an e-ticket. So just like in the past, we have two types of e-tickets. We have the operator ticket or the job ticket, and then we also have the LEM. And just by concept, we've separated them out because the operator ticket is really, I guess the more appropriate term would be unit ticket, because that's focused on a unit, and you're allowed to have one unit on that ticket. You can't have multiple units. And so that is at the row level, or the unit level. Now, a LEM is more of a job level ticket, and it can have as many units and employees as needed. So that is at the job level. It's down here towards the footer where, it's not affected by the individual records. And we'll start with the job ticket here. So if you have employees listed here, and I'm going to get rid of this one since it's a duplicate, you're going to want to mark one of them as the primary resource. So for any of you that have attempted to have one operator or one employee receive the primary ticket over the other, like I know in some cases they were looking for the oiler to get the primary ticket instead of the operator. And so they had to change their process a bit in order to support that. But now you have more flexibility. So we're not going to force you to identify the operator as your oiler or vice versa in order to get the right person that primary ticket. Now you can choose one or the other and issue the ticket to them. So whoever has the checkbox will be the primary ticket for that e-ticket. And primary, for any of you that have not used Atom before, the primary ticket is the ticket that is used to capture customer signatures and complete any checklists. A secondary ticket is kind of like a read-only ticket that gives the field employee all the information that they need, all the same information that the primary is getting, but it doesn't have any workflow functionality. It's just used to capture time and provide information. So anyone that does not have that checked will receive a secondary ticket. So now that I have my primary declared, I can come in here and click on Generate Ticket. Now, when I do this, just like in the past, it's going to want to save, and then it's going to run a series of validations. But we've changed the validations, and I covered that a bit in the previous webinar, and I may touch on it here as well. We'll see how this goes. So if I click on this icon, first it's going to prompt to save. Now it's ran its validation, which if you recall in Legacy, it does a validation on each and every single row every time you save. Well, any row that was modified, I should say. The difference between WPF and Legacy is that WPF is only going to look at the modified records when you save it, but I also have the ability to run it on demand and check every record just to make sure that I haven't missed anything as far as ensuring that I've got the right employees for the job and I don't have any conflicts. So this message will come up in the event that there are any conflicts. And if I select yes, those conflicts are going to persist. That's another big change from Legacy is once you click through those in Legacy, which I know a lot of dispatchers, they just click right through. you can't recover those. You're not going to be able to see those again. So we decided to have them persist in WPF. So if I click yes, I've acknowledged all of them and they're still present. You can see all the indicators here that there are conflicts. And that's because of the other job that we created in the last webinar for the same time frame. It's going to show them as overlapping, as well as there may be a certification issue in those as well. So just like in Legacy, we have this small pop-up window called Generate a Job Ticket, where you set a date. What's different from Legacy is that we added this secondary employee. And the reason for this is the new layout allows for more than 2 employees assigned to a unit. And that, it all depends on your business model and whether or not that's required. But in some cases, there are advantages to being able to assign more than 2 employees to a unit. If you're dealing with a rigging crew, and you've got 4 people to that unit, you can, to that truck, you can assign all 4 to that unit instead of just 2. But the secondary employee here, this is bridging the gap between our legacy solution and the future of the job screen. So currently, you're not going to be able to add more than 2 to the ticket. The reason is that we have to maintain that backwards compatibility with legacy just until we get everyone over to the new screen. Once we get everyone over, then we can start expanding this so that you can add those multiple employees or more than 2 employees to the unit. Hopefully I made that clear. All right, so I've got the ticket date, and this ticket date is going to look specifically at the start date. In addition to that, it's also checking to see if a ticket was already issued for that date. So when I click on the date icon here, or the calendar icon, one, it's going to disable any date that is outside the scope of my unit's date range. So here's the 7th. That's the first one that's enabled. And I can keep going until I get to the 1st of June, which is what is showing up here. Anything outside of that date range is not going to let me issue a ticket, and I don't have to deal with a pop-up message telling me I can't issue a ticket for that date range. If a ticket did exist on the 7th, then this would turn red, and the 8th would be the first available, and it would default to the 8th here. So I don't have to make that manual change each time I go to issue a ticket. So I'm going to click OK. And immediately the ticket is sent to Adam. If you recall, before we introduced the e-ticket, the enhanced e-ticket cancellation, that was the methodology where you would have to first generate the ticket and then save the job in order for that ticket to be sent. But we removed that requirement for saving the job to send the ticket. It's being done immediately. So I click OK. And as soon as I do that, the e-ticket manager, as I call it, pops up. The e-ticket manager is equivalent to what was displayed in the legacy screen at the bottom where you could see all your e-tickets, but this has more functionality. And I think I touched on this in the previous webinar. I don't recall. But with this, you are now able to refresh this independent of the job. So if the operator was working through this ticket, I wouldn't have to leave the job and come back to see the current status. I can just click on refresh and it's going to show me. Additionally, the data points that were displayed in the legacy were fixed. There was nothing that anyone could do about adding more to that or defining that on a per user basis. But now you are able to do that. So I have hidden most of the data points just for simplicity. This is the default layout. And I can come in here and I can show most of the aspects of that e-ticket that we're capturing in the database. And you saw how that screen just expanded on its own with those columns being added, so you're not having to scroll left and right. Now, if you were to remove them, you can see that it reduces its width. And I can also raise this up. So if I'm dealing with a lot of tickets, I can still see as many tickets as needed. I can also hide the canceled e-tickets. So if you're a dispatcher that has a habit of canceling e-tickets, which is not a bad thing, but you want to clear that up and simplify that view, you can hide those canceled e-tickets, because what we're doing today is saving those to a PDF. so that you don't have to worry about those tickets anymore. They're being taken out of the equation, and then they're being stored in the filings. All right, let's see here. So if it's an operator ticket or a job ticket, it's going to show up here and it's going to show operator. We are working to change this. Soon this is going to say job. We're changing the convention for naming of our tickets just to make it more uniform and universal for the different markets that we serve. And so we have the go-to icon, which we went over in the previous webinar on the main tab. This is to show you the actual e-ticket. So this would open up the report just like you have in Legacy. The equivalent step to achieve that would be double-clicking the record in the Legacy screen. Now you have that icon. So you can just click on the icon and it's going to bring up that report. Next, we have complete the e-ticket and cancel the e-ticket. So completing the e-ticket is just forcing that ticket to be completed so that it can continue through the workflow for invoicing. Very exceptional use case there, but it is important to have that. And then of course, canceling the e-ticket in the event that information is incorrect when it's sent to the operator or the field employee, you can cancel that e-ticket in order to issue a new one. You have the ticket number, we went over the type, and you have the work date. This is the date that the ticket is issued for. The e-ticket comments, one point of confusion in Legacy was we had comments at the unit level and the employee level, but they never displayed here. And so I just want to highlight that e-ticket comments are coming from the e-ticket. So it's only when the field employee enters that information in on e-ticket that you're going to see that information here. And then you have current status, which no change to that. And same with the start time and all the other times here. All right, so if I want to cancel a ticket, I can click on cancel e-ticket. It just confirms that whether or not I want to cancel. I can say yes. Now this is going to go through that same process. If you have the enhanced e-ticket cancellation enabled, it's immediately generating that PDF and updating the status to cancel. So from that point, I can now issue a new ticket for that same date without any interruption in the workflow. Because that ticket now exists here, you can see that this incremented from 1 to 2. It is now in the filings. So if I change my view to e-tickets, it's right here, 14627 has been canceled. So now this will no longer disrupt what I'm trying to do on the job. And as I mentioned the refresh already, and I can always close out of this if I want. It's accessible through the Manage e-tickets hyperlink in the bottom right. And you got to click on the unit. In a subsequent release, I believe it's going to be the Q1 release, you'll have the same ticket listing on the employee and on the unit wherever they overlap. So right now, a unit ticket is only being shown on the unit, but we're correcting that. So it displays for both the operator the employee and the unit. Same goes with the LEM, it'll be on both. All right, let's see. So if I were to generate a new ticket, it's going to run that validation real quick. And now it goes back to 4.7. And that's because I had canceled that ticket. If I click OK, here's the new ticket sent for the same date. And now if I try to issue a ticket again, you should see it jump to 4.8. So you're not having to adjust that date. It's going to find the first available date. And I'm just going to cancel that for make sure we don't have any disruption here. All right, so that's generating a ticket for operators or for a single unit based ticket. Now we're going to get into the LEM. The LEM, which is labor equipment material, is the job level e-ticketing functionality, and it's intended to capture all the resources and the employees that are being used for that particular scope. So we have this icon down here, generate LEM ticket. And when I click on this, it's very similar to what you have in Legacy if you're already users of the LEM. And it's going to identify your date, the primary employee, and the show start times between. This is an ability to filter out your records to just a time frame that matters. For example, if you're doing shift work and you are just looking for the resources for a given shift, you can set your time frame here to only see those records, so it's easier to check instead of dealing with a scroll bar here. Something else to highlight is that the top grid, this is editable, meaning I can check the checkbox on it, but the bottom is for reference. If I select the primary employee, now granted I don't have resources set correctly here. Let's see here. And it's pulling up 4.6. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but it's pulling up 4.6 because there is a resource scheduled for 4.6. So that's why it was showing up. Since this is 4.7, that is not showing up on that screen. If I change this date to 4.7, now you can see the available resources, job level resources, which I have 2 cranes. Kind of maybe hard to see, so I apologize, but you can see I've got the 1 unit here and the other unit here, which is represented in this grid. Additionally, I have the unit level resources. So this is showing all the employees that are tied to job level resources. And when I select the primary employee, and this primary list is going to be looking at either the checkbox for a unit-based primary employee or a job level employee, which I haven't gotten into job level employee. Maybe for the next one, I'll add that. If I select Kyle, it's going to automatically identify the crane that Kyle is associated with. It's going to pull in AT09, and it's going to check that by default. When you have an employee associated to a unit, you can't break them out for ticketing purposes. So if I uncheck that resource, I can send a ticket to Kyle, but it's not going to send that unit over. If I check it, now it's going to send it, and it's going to include Angie. I don't know if you caught that or not, but if I uncheck that, this ticket's just going to Kyle. If I check it, it's going to bring Angie in with it because that's a team. So now when I generate that ticket, I'm generated successfully, and now that's appearing. It's all the same logic here as far as the ticket type and the ticketing number. No changes there. You'll see both of them here in some cases. Here we go. So because this particular unit was included on that LEM, it's going to show the LEM here in addition to those operator tickets that we issued previously. Now let's cancel this guy. And all the while you can see this ticking up because it's generating that PDF. All right, so now I'm going to throw on a job level employee. And we'll make this a rigger. Oh, I think I only have Angie as a rigger though. Let me find a signalman. Who we got here? All right, Taylor. Taylor is going to be my rigger. Or, I'm sorry, my signalman. And I'm going to generate another LEM here. So I click generate LEM. Yes, I want to save changes. It's going to do a quick validation. Notice that Taylor doesn't get one of those triangle icons there. That's because there's no conflict with him. So now it's showing the resources available. And I can set this back to the 7th. And if I bring in AT09, it's also going to bring in Angie. I got to select the primary here. And I can also select Taylor as an additional employee. So now this LEM is going to be sent to Taylor, Kyle, and to Angie. I can also switch this so that Taylor is the primary. And that when I include Kyle's crane, AT09, it's going to include Kyle and Angie. Now if I click OK, LEM generated successfully. And now Taylor is the one with the primary e-ticket that's going to be signed by the customer. And Angie and Kyle just have the read-only tickets or the secondary tickets. All right, in some cases, when you're generating LEMs, they tend to repeat themselves day after day after day. And in order to simplify that experience, a couple of years ago, we introduced the copy LEM feature. So now that's what we're going to go through is copying LEMs. So if you already have a LEM created for the job, you can copy the LEM so that you're not having to do as much selection. So if I click on copy LEM, it's going to show any active LEMs that are available within the job, and it's going to set to the first available date. So in this case, it's the 8th. And the primary is set to Taylor because Taylor was the primary for the original e-ticket. Again, I have the option to use the filtering of the times, and I have the same level of control here as I had in Generate LEM, where I can make changes as needed. So I can either just keep this as the default and click OK, that's going to generate a LEM, or I can make a change and say, well, Taylor's not going to be the primary today or tomorrow, Kyle's going to be. So now that changes everything around, and I can mark him as being included on that ticket, and I can send it out. But in this case, Kyle is going to be the primary. So let's just walk through that one and click OK. LEM generated successfully there. And if I go back to that copy LEM screen, you're going to see Kyle here was the primary for that ticket. So as I go back and forth, I can see what those tickets were comprised of, select which one is most relevant for what I'm trying to do, and then just copy it by clicking OK, or make minor adjustments as needed and then click OK. So let's cancel these guys. And just for example's sake here, we've got these canceled tickets. I'm going to click on the canceled e-tickets icon here, and they just go away. They're going to show you just the active tickets. All right. Now, as far as controlling records that have e-tickets associated, what we did is, and I believe this was also introduced fairly recently on the legacy side, is deleting of employee or unit resources. Since we're creating that PDF of those e-tickets, there's no longer the need to have a dependency. And that's what I had that turned off. Since these are all canceled, I can now delete this unit or either of these resources. If I wanted to come in and delete, I can do that. Or if I wanted to change the name of an employee, switch it out with somebody else, I can do that as well. Same with the unit. I can also come in here and change this from AT09 to AT10 as long as I cancel that ticket. I no longer have to add new resources in order to achieve that. And I think that covers it. Am I missing anything, Kyle? I was expecting this to take longer.
No, I think you're good, David. We can hop over to Q&A.
Okay, well, it gives
Thank
us
you.
more time. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions there. All right, do you mind if I keep my screen up so that I can do examples if needed?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, first question. Are the shortcuts for adding and inserting the same in the new WPF screen? The keyboard shortcuts?
Not for insert. So insert is, go ahead.
No, yeah, you got it, David.
Okay, so insert is not an option right now. We've gone back and forth on whether or not to include it. We have drag and drop capability now. So if I want to take this employee and move him in between, let me do that. There we go. So you saw that AT10 and AT9 switch spots there. And I can also rearrange these guys. I can move Angie. I should be able to move Angie there. Oh, come on. Not letting me flip those around. I can grab this. Oh, I think that's tied to e-tickets. Let me go in here. Did I cancel all e-tickets? I did. I'll have to look at that one. But as you add resources, you should be able to rearrange. So if I added another employee here, I can take that. Yeah, it looks like it's tied to e-tickets. I'll look into that one. But I can drag and drop. So that replaces the insert functionality. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, is the Control A key for adding is available, or is that just yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Control A and Control E. So I guess that is a deviation from legacy. Is in legacy you would do Control A whether you're adding a unit or you're adding an employee. But we decided to move away from that in order to support this layout. So Control A is going to add a unit, and Control E is going to add a job level employee. Now, just for clarification's sake, I'm going to press Control A now. That's going to add this unit here. So if I select the unit, sorry, that message is just for the unit type defaults, which is not a part of this webinar. So I've got this unit, and when I want to add an employee, I can click on this, click here to add new item banner, or I can press Control A as long as I have focus within that record. Oh, screw that up. There we go. So now you can add them at the, you can do Control A in the employees as well. Same with specifications and telemetry if needed. Once you have a record in there, you can press Control A. Once it has the focus, you should be able to add records there.
Okay. So the next question, David, you mentioned, or you showed how there's the cascading from the unit to the resources below. Does the cascade work, or does I shouldn't say the cascade, does the same effect take place from the main tab to the equipment and resources like it did in Legacy?
No, it does not.
You change the date?
So now that I have a variety of dates on the resources tab, if I go onto the main tab and I make an adjustment, if I take this to the 4th, you're not going to see those changes applied here. You would just grab the resources necessary and make the adjustments. So rather than changing every resource, you change it for the resources that matter. Go ahead.
If you hadn't made any changes to those dates, let's say it was just the default for the main tab, if you updated the main tab, would those changes follow through? Assuming no changes are made on the resources tab, or is it still the same logic?
Same logic. So all the records on the resources tab are looking at the preceding record when you first populate it to pull in that information. It's not looking at the job for that information.
Gotcha. All right. So can you issue a ticket for a date that's already passed?
Yes, you can issue a ticket for a date that has already passed. In fact, let's see. If I make an adjustment here, well, I think case in point were the tickets that I had already generated. When I click on this guy, today is the 14th, and you can see that these were all issued for the 7th and the 8th. So yeah, you can issue tickets for the past if needed. Shouldn't have any issues there.
So nothing changes there. Just a question on, can you prevent double booking? I think this was illustrated as well in your demo. We had Angie twice. So you're going to get the, go ahead, Dave, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so we have the validation process, which is going to look at all the records, and you're going to see the hover text is going to show, in this example, the schedule overlaps for AT09 with a different job, and it shows you the date range of the job so that you can go to the schedule and find that job and see where the conflict lies and what needs to be done to address it. Now, as far as having the same employee twice within a unit and issuing them for a ticket, it's going to support that, but may not be the way that you would expect it to work. So you can have them listed twice, but they're only going to get one ticket. So the logic that we incorporated into the API is that if there were 2 tickets that should have been issued for one day because you had the same employee listed twice, they're only going to receive one. Where, if they're I believe if they're the primary, that's the one that they're going to receive. So hopefully that addresses your question, but I may need a little more context in order to better answer that.
Okay, so I got a question on canceled tickets. You were able to change the unit or delete the unit out once you cancel the tickets. Is that possible once it's been downloaded on Atom?
Yeah, so when we introduced the E-Ticket, enhanced E-Ticket cancellation feature, we had adjusted the logic so that you can cancel a ticket up to the point that the first signature is recorded. If you cancel the ticket, then you can always make the change within NextGen to reflect your resource change and issue a new ticket. So download is no longer the line in the sand, so to speak. It's the first signature. So it gave you a little more flexibility there, but we didn't want to encroach on the signature process because of the sanctity of those signatures.
Okay, and kind of follow up to that question, David, are you able to delete a job if tickets have been generated? And I'm assuming canceled.
You can.
If they're...
there is a scenario that we need to look at. It's an edge case. It's pretty far out there, but hypothetically, if you were to delete all the resources from the job and then try to delete the job, or sorry, cancel all the e-tickets and then delete the job, you're going to end up with orphaned records, and you don't want to do that. So what we will be doing is adding a level of validation in order to account for that. And just have to plan out in the event that one of those tickets is available on a device and they don't have service. Do we reconstitute the job just like we do with the e-ticket? So that is something that we're exploring, but pretty rare scenario there. So we'll come up with a solution and try to get that introduced.
Thanks, David. So there's a question about covering what it would look like for a delivery truck, trailer, driver, and then attaching an inspection to the LEM. Okay. I'm not sure if that means maybe you can show file links as well.
Well, I think what they're getting at there is how is it different than legacy? Both with the structure for a truck trailer combination and how the e-ticket or the checklist is handled. So in the case of a, let me see if I have a truck here. I'll just assign a truck. So you would have to add another job level unit here in order to add the trailer. And I'll just grab a generic trailer here. And then for accountability purposes, I want to assign an employee to both so I know who is who here. And I can also assign Linda here. And mark her primary on both of those. So now if I issue a ticket, I can issue the ticket for the tractor. Now a job ticket, it's not going to include the trailer because remember the job ticket or the unit ticket is specifically to the unit, the one unit that you're issuing it for. But if I were to issue a LEM, and you find the dates relevant there, 4/6. Okay, we've got Linda here. So I can grab Linda as the primary, which brings up the truck, and then I can mark the trailer. So now when I issue that LEM, she's going to see the truck and the trailer. Now for the checklist aspect, any checklist, if you have the unit checklist set up, then any checklist associated with the trailer and or the truck will be issued to the primary LEM holder, which in this case is Linda. Another scenario that plays out and we're still working on is in the event that you have multiple units, like say you want to include this crane as well. And for any of you that have ran into this situation already, you know that only the primary employee, in this case Linda, is going to get the checklist for the crane, the truck, and the trailer. So we are brainstorming a solution in order to better support that, where you can get it to the appropriate people. But there's a lot of gaps that we have to fill in that. So it's going to take some time for us to figure out the right solution. But it is definitely being worked on. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, David, we got one database related. Are there any additional tables added to NextGen for the scheduling jobs or issuing tickets?
Yes.
The database?
Yes, there is. There is a new relationship table that has been introduced. I want to say it's called the FMS_resources table. And what that does is establish a relationship between the unit and the employee. Now, the reason why we incorporated this is to better solidify that relationship on the LEM. So for any LEM users out there, you know that we provide a list of the employees and then a separate list of the units associated with that LEM. Coming with the E-Ticket redesign, you're going to see the unit and the employee next to each other. You're going to have all that information that's relevant to that specific user. And as part of that, and in conjunction with the WPF job screen, we created this resource table. And this resource table is extensible. So we're going to be able to support more relationships like that. So the way we planned it out was to factor in the relationship between a tractor and a trailer, and an employee in a checklist, or a unit in a checklist. And so once we are comfortable with the functionality of that table and everyone's using it, then we can look at expanding that so that we can better improve those relationships and make it easier for field employees to see that information in a comprehensive way, where instead of being two separate tables on that e-ticket, it'll all be in one for that employee.
Okay, we had one regarding travel time. You mentioned the 30 minutes added to your time, or to my time, I think it was, prior to Angie arriving. Would you include travel time in that date or that time range typically, or is that?
I can't say that's typical. I mean, all of our customers have slightly different approaches to how time is managed within a job in NextGen. I can tell you firsthand experience, when I was dispatching, I would use the employee time as the time that the operator was to be in the yard. And then the unit time was the time that they needed to roll out of the yard, and the job start time was the time that they needed to be on site. And I had some variation between a portal-to-portal job versus a mobilization job. But that doesn't work for everyone. Not to mention, not all timestamps are showing up by default on the e-tickets, so you can run into that issue as well. So you really have to find what works best for your organization when it comes to the time offsets and in how you use, whether it's the unit or the employee level time and the job time. I will tell you though, something else coming with the e-ticket redesign later this year is going to be hook ready. Now, hook ready, you're going to be able to name that whatever you want. It could be work time or however you want to use it. But the concept is that you can put a specific time that is different than the other times that we have on that e-ticket for that field employee to see. So it should give you a little more flexibility in that as well.
Thanks, David. Can you schedule resources past the end date of the end date on the main tab of the job, like for a pickup of counterweights a couple days later?
Yes, absolutely. So in this case, this job is scheduled from 4/4 to 6/25, and I can come in here and adjust this resource to go from the 1st of April. That is allowed.
Okay. Is there a date filter similar to the legacy screen to kind of reduce the population on the resources tab?
Yes, actually, it's definitely a lot more granular than what we had in legacy. If you are familiar with the legacy job screen in the top right of the unit people tab, we had 2 date fields there where you can filter out the list of resources. Now you can do it either at the unit people level, if speaking in legacy terms, or you can do it on a per unit basis. So you have more flexibility in that respect, but I can come in here and just say, well, I only want to see for 4.7. Or if I want to go is greater than, and I can select actually, let's do less than. And then I'm going to set this to the 6th, because remember, we changed Linda here to being on the 1st. So I select that. No, what did I do wrong there? I will have to look into that one. It's not picking up that one. It may be because I haven't saved it since I did that again. Less than or equal to. Yep. Yeah, I'll figure out that one. It should just be showing this one. Oh, I'm sorry. This is just looking at the top level grid. So if I were to collapse this, collapse all of these are the dates that it's looking for. So that's why it didn't show up. When it comes to the employees, like in this case with Linda here, you can use it here to filter out, but it's not going to filter them out. The unit level resources are not going to be filtered out when you filter out the job. Hopefully that makes sense. And I apologize for the mix up there.
Okay, got a couple more minutes here. How do you switch out a primary when a ticket has already been started?
So if you issue a ticket and the ticket's already been started, meaning they left the yard or they hit the start button, but they have not received the first signature yet, you would cancel the e-ticket, and which you saw in here earlier, ET09, where we went in and we clicked on cancel e-ticket. And once we ticket or cancel that e-ticket, we can come in and change any of the resources related to that ticket. So I can switch this to a different employee, and then I would just generate a new ticket for that resource.
Okay. And then I got a question here just on the general time frame of the release of this screen and this build. I can take that one, David. So we're going to start scheduling the updates. That we actually have started scheduling the updates. So we'll be reaching out shortly to get that update in place on the calendar. I just wanted to remind everyone, I think we touched on it last time, but just because you receive an update with the new screen in it, it will not automatically turn on. It is something that has to be turned on in set system default. So when you open up NextGen for the first time after the update, you're still going to see the legacy job screen. We highly recommend that you contact your CSM before turning it on. There are some transition type activities that we want to make sure take place with existing jobs. We want to make sure everyone's trained and comfortable with the new screen. So if you have any specific questions, ask your CSM in terms of timing. Like I said, we're working through the scheduling, and we're going to go from there. Okay. Well, thank you, David. Got a few more questions that we'll get to by email if we haven't answered everything. Let's share my screen. Okay, so just a few closing comments. Support tools. There will be an email sent out tomorrow by Matt Reinhardt with links to both this recording as well as the previous webinar. There'll be links to our WPF dispatching and admin guide in that email. If you don't get that email for whatever reason, just reach out to your CSM. We'll make sure you get links to all the documentations and recordings. We are starting to do some smaller group training sessions, so please, a reminder to fill out the survey if you're interested in those types of training sessions. You can always reach out to your CSM or your support team. And like I said before, once we do provide the update, we are encouraging that you work closely with your CSM to make sure that everything's ready to go and there's no issues with the cutover. We realize, change can be difficult, and we want to make sure it goes as smooth as possible there. And then the last slide here, just want to cover what's coming next. There's been some questions around the next screens that will be introduced. So we do have some features that I wanted to point out here. We've got some enhanced map controls that are going to be added to the system shortly. From a WPF perspective, the next two screens we're working on are the invoicing screen and the unit schedule. So you're going to see some improvements there, similar look and feel to the scheduled job screen on the invoicing side, and some neat features added to the unit schedule. And throughout this year and into 2022, we're going to continue to work through the existing screens, the quoting screens, all the different areas of NextGen, and get those converted over to WPF. So you're going to see a much more consistent look throughout the system. But again, the jobs is where we wanted to get started. And the other one we're really excited about is the E-Ticket Redesign. That's actually going to be prior to the WPF invoicing and unit schedule screens that David touched on briefly in his demo. So that's going to be another enhancement we're going to be rolling out in the near future. We will be scheduling more webinars like this for specific features that I just mentioned, and also for our quarterly releases, just so everyone's clear on what's coming and what changes are taking place. So it's trying to be a little more transparent on changes to the system and enhancements. So stay tuned for some more invites to upcoming webinars. I want to thank everybody for joining again today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks.